There is a kind of power that doesn't shout, doesn't fight, doesn't even need to move loudly. It's the power of the void, the presence of a man who offers nothing. No need, no approval, no emotion, no validation. He becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, others see only themselves. They start projecting their own insecurities, their desires, their hunger into the blank space he creates. And that's the hidden law Machiavelli whispered from exile: offer nothing, and they will give you everything. When you become the void, you don't dominate by force, you dominate by absence. Your silence forces them to speak. Your stillness forces them to act. Your lack of hunger makes them desperate to feed you. You gain control not because you fight, but because they collapse into themselves trying to define you. Most people think respect comes from being known, being loud, being transparent. They overshare, they overexplain, they overexpose, and in doing so, they give away their shape. They let themselves be measured, categorized, and controlled. But when you withhold, when you deliberately give nothing, you become the question no one can answer, the silence everyone leans toward, the mystery that others cannot resist. The truth is, these people are not drawn to what they understand. They are drawn to what they cannot decode. They hate the unknown, but they are addicted to it. This is why silence builds altitude, why ambiguity builds obsession, why distance builds gravity. The man who doesn't fight to be understood becomes the man everyone tries to understand. And in that effort, they invest in him. The more they chase, the more they obey. Think of history's most powerful figures. Not the loud ones, but the quiet ones. Marcus Aurelius watching an empire unravel without complaint. Genghis Khan silent before conquest. Machiavelli himself writing in obscurity while his words shaped princes. Their silence didn't weaken them, it multiplied their presence. Even nature proves the point. The black hole doesn't shine, yet it devours galaxies. The ocean doesn't announce itself, yet it rules the world with depth. This is not passivity, it's weaponized emptiness, a deliberate discipline. You feel everything, but you show almost nothing. You calculate before you act. You delay before you speak. You never reveal your hand unless you've already won. And because you show less, what little you do show becomes priceless. A glance, a word, a movement, all magnified because of their rarity. That's why the most dangerous man in any room is not the one who talks. It's the one who watches. Not the one who needs, but the one who offers nothing. He doesn't react. He doesn't explain. He doesn't chase. And in that stillness, everyone else performs for him. Everyone else confesses to him. Everyone else gives him leverage without realizing it. That is the beginning of the law of the void. True power begins not when you declare yourself, but when you let others declare you. The second law of the void is restraint. Most people can't bear emptiness. A pause in conversation makes them rush to fill it. An unanswered question makes them scramble for explanations. A moment of silence feels like suffocation, and they break it with nervous laughter or meaningless words. But restraint is where power hides. If you can resist the urge to fill the void, you force others to collapse into it. Restraint means you don't reveal your every thought. You don't rush to correct misunderstandings. You don't hand out your opinions like loose change. Every time you speak, you spend power. Every time you withhold, you store it. Most people go bankrupt without realizing it, wasting their presence in constant chatter. But the one who saves his words, who saves his reactions, who saves his judgments, becomes wealthy in mystery. And mystery is influence. Machiavelli understood this clearly. He wrote that men are ungrateful, fickle liars and deceivers, and that their true motives only appear under pressure. When you show restraint, you create that pressure. You wait. You hold back. You let others talk themselves into exposure. The weak reveal too much. The proud exaggerate. The envious confess their bitterness in small slips. You don't force them, they force themselves. Restraint turns you into a silent interrogator. But restraint is not just about silence, it's about presence. You don't chase approval, you let it come. You don't demand attention, you let it be given. You don't beg for trust, you let it be earned. By doing less, you provoke more. The world leans toward those who don't lean toward it. Restraint also teaches discipline. It stops you from reacting emotionally when provoked. Someone insults you. You don't rise to defend yourself. You let the insult echo unanswered until it dies on its own. Someone demands your opinion. You don't rush, you make them wait, And in the waiting, your words gain weight. Someone pushes you to reveal your plans. You smile faintly and reveal nothing. The less you give, the more they want. The more they want, the more power you hold. History remembers restraint as strength. The general who didn't rush into battle but waited for the perfect moment. The leader who didn't answer accusations with panic but with calm silence. The rival who never showed anger, only patience until the opponent destroyed themselves. This is the weapon of restraint, not doing nothing but making every action deliberate. So the second law is this: resist the urge to fill the void. Embrace silence. Let others stumble into the emptiness you create, because restraint is not weakness. It is control, and control held long enough bends the world toward you. The third law of the void is ambiguity. People crave clarity. They want to know where you stand, what you think, how you feel. They want to put you in a box so they can predict you, manage you, dismiss you. But ambiguity denies them that comfort. Ambiguity keeps them guessing. And when they guess, they obsess. Machiavelli knew that once you are fully understood, you are no longer feared. Predictability makes you safe, and safety makes you powerless. But when your motives are unclear, when your silence can mean 10 different things, when your smile might hide approval or disdain, you become dangerous. Not because of what you do, but because no one can ever calculate what you might do. Ambiguity is not lying. It's framing. You give fragments, not wholes. You drop hints, not explanations. You leave contradictions on purpose. To one person, you look like an ally. To another, you look like a rival. To everyone, you look like a puzzle. And puzzles demand attention. The more they try to solve you, the more they revolve around you. Think of history's most magnetic figures, the generals who never revealed their full plans until the battle was already won. The rulers whose expressions could not be read, leaving their courts in a suspense. Even in personal relationships, the man or woman who is never fully available, never fully defined, becomes unforgettable. Mystery outlives transparency every time. Ambiguity also protects you. If your enemies don't know your limits, they fear crossing them. If rivals don't know your next move, they hesitate. If allies don't know your true thoughts, they tread carefully. The fog you create becomes a shield. It buys you time. It buys you space. It buys you control. But the genius of ambiguity is this: people will invent the answers you refuse to give. They will project their own hopes and fears onto you. Some will imagine you're merciful, others will imagine you're cruel. Some will think you're distant, others will think you're calculating. And in all cases, they're serving your power because they are defining themselves against the mirror you've built. So the third law is this: never be fully known. Keep your motives layered, your silences open, your presence unsettled. Ambiguity makes you larger than life because people will always imagine more than you reveal. And in that imagination, you live not as a person, but as a force. The fourth law of the void is absence. Nothing creates gravity like being gone. Most people cling to presence, terrified that if they step back, they'll be forgotten. They flood the room with noise, with updates, with constant availability. But the Machiavellian knows presence creates familiarity, and familiarity breeds contempt. Absence, when deliberate, creates value. Absence forces people to measure your weight by your silence. When you're not around, they replay your words, they interpret your gestures, they speculate on your intentions. The less they see you, the more they imagine you. And imagination always paints you larger, sharper, and more dangerous than reality. History proves this. Great rulers rarely made themselves common. They appeared rarely and with purpose. Every sighting was an event. Every word was treasured. Their absence made their presence thunderous. Compare this to weak leaders, always explaining, always defending, always seeking approval. Their abundance made them ordinary, their words cheap, their authority eroded. But absence is not abandonment. It's rhythm. You withdraw to create hunger, then reappear to satisfy it, but only just enough. Too much absence and they forget. Too much presence and they dismiss. The art is in balancing distance with impact, like a storm that vanishes into silence only to return stronger. Absence also tests loyalty. When you disappear, watch who remains steady, who grows bitter, who grows desperate. Those who forget you quickly were never loyal. Those who crave your return reveal dependency. Those who remain calm and disciplined show strength. Your absence reveals what presence could never show. Machiavelli wrote that rulers should avoid being too accessible. Intimacy breeds weakness, and weakness invites betrayal. But the fortress of absence keeps you elevated. It reminds people that you are not one of them, you are above them. You do not beg for their attention, they beg for yours. So the fourth law is this: vanish with intent. Step back so your presence grows heavier. Withdraw so your return has impact. Let them feel the emptiness of your absence, so that when you reappear, they are reminded you were never ordinary, you were always the axis they revolved around. Absence weaponized doesn't make you forgotten. It makes you unforgettable. The fifth law of the void is unpredictability. Nothing unsettles people more than not knowing what you will do next. Most men are patterns, they repeat themselves until they become predictable, and predictable men can be controlled. But the void breaks patterns. It teaches you to move in silence, to act when least expected, to shift rhythm before anyone can adjust. Machiavelli advised rulers to be both lion and fox, ferocious when necessary, cunning when required. But the real mastery lies in switching between the two without warning. One moment generosity, the next indifference. One moment warmth, the next silence. It's not chaos, it's design. A rhythm of disruption that makes others cautious. When they can't predict you, they can't prepare for you. And when they can't prepare, they hesitate. Unpredictability isn't recklessness. It's theater. You choose your surprises carefully. A word withheld when they expect an answer. A sudden strike when they expect patience. A retreat when they think you'll attack. Each move unsettles their certainty and makes them orbit closer, desperate to decode you. Think of storms. The predictable rain is ignored. The unpredictable thunderstorm is feared. The storm that changes course, that appears and disappears without warning, holds attention. The same is true of people. Predictability is safe, but safe is forgettable. The unpredictable man is unforgettable. But unpredictability must be balanced. Too much and you look unstable. Too little and you're ordinary. The art lies in blending stability with disruption, steady enough to be trusted, sudden enough to be feared. The void thrives in this balance. It is calm, but it is never safe. Machiavelli would say men are governed by fear or hope. Unpredictability gives you both. Fear because they don't know your limits. Hope because sometimes you reward them when they least expect it. That cycle, fear and hope, disruption and relief, is what binds people to you more tightly than love or loyalty ever could. So the fifth law is this: never be fully predictable. Be the storm that shifts without warning, the flame that flickers without rhythm, the figure whose silence might mean mercy or destruction. Because when people cannot read you, they stop trying to control you and start trying to survive you. The sixth law of the void is control of information. Power is not just what you say, it's what you refuse to say. Every detail you reveal is a string that can be pulled, a weapon that can be turned back against you. The weak spill themselves out like water, their fears, their dreams, their plans, their mistakes. And once exposed, they can be used, bought, or broken. But the void reveals little. It starves curiosity until curiosity itself becomes a leash. Machiavelli observed that rulers who talk too much become prisoners of their own words. Every promise becomes a chain. Every confession becomes evidence. Every explanation is a negotiation. The silent ruler, by contrast, remains unbound. He cannot be cornered because no one knows where he stands. He cannot be betrayed because no one knows what he hides. His silence is not emptiness, it is armor. But control of information doesn't mean total silence. It means precision. You give fragments, never the whole. You drop hints, never the plan. You reveal only what advances your position, never what weakens it. Each word becomes bait. Each gesture becomes theater. People lean in desperate to complete the picture, but the picture is always missing its most vital piece. And in that incompleteness, you control their attention. The genius of withholding is that people will invent the truth for you. They will imagine your motives, inflate your abilities, exaggerate your strength. And often their imagination paints you as far greater than reality. Why correct them? Let them believe. Let them build the myth. The less you reveal, the larger you become. History is full of rulers who thrived on this art. Leaders who let mystery do the talking, who never explained themselves, who turned vagueness into legend. Their enemies couldn't strike because they never knew where the center was. Their allies stayed loyal because they never knew how much they depended on them. Information was the game, and the one who spoke least always won. So the sixth law is this: starve them of certainty. Control what they know, and more importantly, what they don't. Be generous with silence, stingy with truth. Let them chase shadows, let them argue about your meaning, let them fight over your intentions, because in the fog you create, you are untouchable. Control the story and you control the players. Control the silence and you control the stage. The seventh law of the void is discipline of emotion. Nothing betrays a person faster than their reactions. Anger exposes pride. Fear exposes weakness. Desire exposes dependency. Most people broadcast their vulnerabilities without realizing it. Their tone shifts, their eyes dart, their posture crumbles. Every reaction is a confession, and confessions are weapons in the wrong hands. Machiavelli advised rulers to appear merciful, faithful, humane, but only when useful. To live behind the mask requires emotional control. The fortress of the void cannot stand if your face gives away what your words conceal. A single flinch can undo a lifetime of silence. A single outburst can shatter the aura of distance. That is why emotion must be disciplined, not denied. Discipline means you decide when to show, not others. You can feel rage, but you release it only when it strengthens your authority. You can feel sorrow, but you reveal it only in solitude. You can feel joy, but you share it only as a gift, never as a reflex. Emotion becomes a tool, not a chain. The moment you react on impulse, you hand someone else the strings to control you. But there's more. Emotion, when mastered, can be weaponized. A pause before a smile unsettles more than anger. A calm expression during a crisis frightens more than panic. A faint, deliberate look of disappointment wounds deeper than shouting ever could. When your emotions are chosen with intent, every gesture becomes strategy. Think of the courtroom where the judge shows no expression. His silence terrifies more than any lecture. Think of the general whose calm steadiness rallies an army more than a fiery speech. Think of the ruler who weeps once in public after years of restraint. Suddenly the world interprets his tears as divine. Control doesn't mean emptiness. It means timing. So the seventh law is this: never let emotions own you. Train them until they obey you. Release them only with purpose. Let anger be a blade, not a scream. Let sorrow be a mask, not a weakness. Let joy be a choice, not a need. Because the one who cannot govern himself can never govern others. And when your emotions become tools, not traps, you stop being a player in the game. You become the board on which the game is played. The eighth law of the void is endurance. Building silence, distance, ambiguity, and control is not a one-time act. It is a lifelong discipline. Most people can be mysterious for a moment, calm for a week, disciplined for a season. But endurance separates those who flirt with power from those who keep it. Machiavelli observed that fortune is fickle. Power shifts, allies change, enemies multiply. Betrayal never sleeps. The fortress of the void must be tended daily, brick by brick, or it will crack. One slip of the tongue, one moment of weakness, one careless display of emotion can undo years of restraint. And the higher you rise, the less forgiveness the world offers. Endurance is not optional, it is survival. Endurance also means carrying the loneliness of distance. Silence isolates you. Ambiguity unsettles others. Discipline makes you harder to love. This is the price of sovereignty. Most men can't pay it. They crave warmth, trust, and comfort, so they open the gates of their fortress. And once the gates are open, betrayal walks in smiling. The ruler who endures accepts solitude as armor, not as punishment. He doesn't seek comfort in others, he finds strength in himself. But endurance is not stagnation, it is adaptation. The void shifts as the world shifts. Sometimes silence is power, other times a rare word has more impact. Sometimes distance protects you, other times closeness manipulates better. Endurance is not about freezing your methods, it's about sustaining your vigilance while evolving your tactics. You remain unreadable because you never stop adjusting. Think of history's survivors. The rulers, thinkers, and generals who outlasted rivals weren't always the strongest, they were the most disciplined. They never allowed fatigue to soften them, never let time dull their edge. They endured betrayal, exile, loss, and yet they rebuilt the fortress again and again. Because endurance is not about never falling, it's about never staying fallen. So the eighth law is this: outlast them. outlast the noise, the betrayals, the storms, outlast the envy, the doubt, the shifting tides of fortune. Power doesn't always belong to the strongest or the smartest, it belongs to the one who refuses to break. The void is not a moment, it is a lifetime, and only those who endure it walk away untouchable. The ninth law of the void is inevitability. True power doesn't chase, it draws. It doesn't argue, it dictates. It doesn't beg to be seen, it forces others to look. Inevitability is the aura that surrounds those who have mastered silence, distance, ambiguity, unpredictability, and endurance. Once it settles around you, people no longer ask if you will act. They only wonder when. Machiavelli knew that men are slaves to perception. When they sense inevitability in you, when every gesture feels deliberate, every silence feels heavy, every return after absence feels calculated, they begin to discipline themselves before you even lift a finger. They fear crossing you not because of what you've done, but because of what they imagine you might do. Your reputation acts in your absence. Your aura rules when you are not in the room. Inevitability comes from consistency, not chaos, but rhythm. You cut when needed, and you cut cleanly. You vanish when needed, and you vanish completely. You reward, rarely punish, sparingly, speak selectively. Over time, this predictably ruthless rhythm builds expectation. People learn that your silence is not weakness, that your distance is not neglect, that your patience is not softness. They learn that when you finally act, the outcome is final. That expectation makes you inevitable. History remembers inevitability, the ruler who outlasts uprisings not through words but through presence, the strategist who wins wars not by rushing but by making opponents collapse under their own weight, the leader whose absence becomes more powerful than his presence. These figures don't just command armies, they command time itself. They become inevitability made flesh. And here's the paradox: inevitability feels soothing to those under its shadow. There is relief in knowing the rules, even if they are harsh. There is calm in recognizing a force you cannot resist. People fear you, but they also cling to you. Because inevitability removes doubt, and doubt is heavier than fear. So the ninth law is this: become the storm on the horizon. Not frantic, not loud, but certain. Let them sense your weight before you move. Let them prepare endlessly, pointlessly for a strike that may come today or years from now. Because inevitability doesn't just command obedience, it commands belief. And once you are inevitable, you are no longer just a player in the game. You are the game itself. The 10th law of the void is legacy. All the silence, distance, ambiguity, restraint, and endurance you practice, if maintained long enough, transform into something greater than influence. They become memory, and memory is the truest fortress of all. Machiavelli understood that rulers die, empires fall, fortunes fade, but reputation endures. Long after your voice is gone, people will still whisper about what you might have done, what you might have thought, what you might have planned. That uncertainty outlives you. The mystery you cultivated becomes your immortality. Legacy is not built on noise. The loud are forgotten once their voices stop. Legacy is built on restraint, on the silences that echo longer than speeches, on the absence that feels heavier than presence, on the unpredictability that left scars of awe and fear. People remember not what you gave them freely, but what you withheld. They remember the tension you created, the void you left behind. Think of the figures whose names still haunt history. They are not remembered for transparency or kindness. They are remembered for the weight of their presence, the discipline of their control, the inevitability of their actions. They became larger than life because they gave fragments, not wholes, mystery, not certainty. The world has been trying to solve them ever since. Your legacy then is the shadow of your void. The fortress you built in life becomes the myth that protects you in death. People study your silences, reinterpret your actions, invent stories to fill the spaces you left empty. And in those stories you live on, not as a man, but as a force. So the final law is this: build your fortress, not just for survival, but for memory. Guard your silence so it echoes. Guard your distance so it lingers. Guard your ambiguity so it multiplies. Guard your endurance so it outlasts. Because one day when you are gone, the fortress of the void will remain. And in that fortress, your legacy will whisper what Machiavelli himself proved: true power does not die. It only withdraws into silence, waiting to be felt again. The 11th law of the void is reflection. To master silence, distance, and ambiguity with others, you must first turn them inward. Most people are strangers to themselves. They avoid their fears, excuse their weaknesses, bury their envy, and disguise their desires. But what you hide from yourself eventually becomes a weapon for someone else. The fortress collapses not from external attack, but from cracks within. Reflection is the discipline of facing those cracks, sitting with silence long enough to hear what it reveals, watching your own reactions with the same sharpness you watch others, asking yourself, where can I be baited? Where can I be bought? Where can I be broken? Then sealing those cracks with discipline before anyone else can see them. Machiavelli knew that rulers fell because they deceived themselves before they were deceived by others. They convinced themselves they were loved when they were only feared. They believed loyalty was eternal when it was conditional. They mistook flattery for truth. The fortress they built outside was strong, but inside it was hollow. Reflection is what prevents that hollowness. But reflection is not comfort, it is confrontation. It means admitting when your silence is not discipline but fear. It means admitting when your distance is not strategy but insecurity. It means cutting not only disloyal allies, but also the weaknesses within you that keep inviting betrayal. Reflection sharpens the blade inward before it strikes outward. And here is the paradox: the more you reflect, the more unreadable you become. Because you no longer react unconsciously, you no longer reveal yourself in envy, fear, or vanity. You've already confronted those shadows privately. When others test you, they find nothing to grab. Your silence isn't emptiness, it's mastery. The 11th law is this: read yourself before you read others. Guard your own weaknesses before you guard against theirs. Because a man who cannot see himself clearly will never see the world clearly. But the man who conquers himself becomes impossible to conquer. The fortress of the void is built brick by brick, but reflection is the foundation. Without it, everything else eventually falls. The 12th and final law of the void is sovereignty. All the silence, distance, ambiguity, restraint, unpredictability, control, discipline, endurance, inevitability, legacy, and reflection. Every law exists to lead you here. Sovereignty is not about ruling others. It is about ruling yourself so completely that no one else can. Most people are slaves, not to rulers, but to themselves. Slaves to their desires, to their fears, to their need for validation. They beg to be understood, to be seen, to be loved. And in that begging, they are owned. Sovereignty breaks those chains. It says, I do not need your approval. I do not need your recognition. I do not need your love. I stand because I choose to stand, and I bend only when I decide. Machiavelli understood that a ruler who cannot command himself cannot command an empire. Without sovereignty, you are vulnerable to every whisper of flattery, every sting of insult, every wave of doubt. With sovereignty, you are untouchable. Others may betray you, attack you, abandon you, but they cannot move you. Because the fortress is not outside, it is inside. Sovereignty does not mean isolation from the world. It means participation without dependence. You can engage, but you don't cling. You can lead, but you don't beg to be followed. You can love, but you don't collapse when love is lost. Your foundation is your own will, your own clarity, your own discipline. And that foundation cannot be shaken. This is why the sovereign is feared and why he is remembered. Because people sense it instinctively. He cannot be bought. He cannot be bent. He cannot be broken. He doesn't need the world, but the world bends toward him anyway. His silence commands more than speeches. His absence weighs more than presence. His inevitability shapes futures long after he is gone. So the 12th law is this: become sovereign. Build the void not as armor, but as a crown. Rule yourself first, and the world will follow. Because in a world of noise, dependency, and weakness, the man who stands alone, disciplined and unshaken, becomes more than a man. He becomes a force. And that force is the legacy Machiavelli left behind, the reminder that true power is not given, not taken, not shared. It is built within brick by brick until it becomes absolute.